The Nebula Grill sat at the far end of Waypoint Station 12, tucked between a spare parts shop and a currency exchange booth. It was not a fancy place. The floors were scuffed from years of boots and claws and tentacles passing through. The lights buzzed softly overhead, casting a warm yellow glow across the worn booths and metal tables. A hand-painted sign above the counter read, "Best coffee this side of the Milky Way." And while that claim was probably not true, nobody ever complained. The station itself was a busy place. Ships came and went at all hours, carrying traders and travelers from 100 different worlds. Humans and dozens of other species walked the corridors together, buying and selling, eating and sleeping, all just trying to get by in a universe that never seemed to slow down. Lisa Monroe had worked at the Nebula Grill for 3 years now. She was 24 years old, with tired eyes and a smile that she had learned to keep on her face no matter how hard the day got. Her brown hair was always pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore the same faded blue apron every shift. She knew the menu by heart. She knew which regulars liked their eggs runny and which ones wanted extra salt on their fries. She remembered names, birthdays, and favorite drinks. The truckers and pilots who passed through called her sweetheart and dear, and always left decent tips. Lisa needed those tips. Her father had died 2 years ago after a long illness, and the medical bills had fallen on her shoulders like a mountain of stone. She owed more credits than she could count, and every paycheck went straight to the debt collectors. She worked double shifts most days, sometimes triple when she could get them. Her feet ached constantly. Her back hurt when she lay down at night, but she never complained, not once. Complaining did not pay bills. It was a slow evening when the three walked in. Lisa noticed them right away. Everyone in the diner did. They were hard to miss. They were tall, nearly 7 feet each, with scaled skin that shimmered like polished emeralds under the diner's lights. Their eyes were golden and slitted, and they moved with the lazy confidence of creatures who had never been told no in their entire lives. They wore robes made of fabrics that Lisa had never seen before, threaded with silver and gold. Heavy rings covered their clawed fingers, and jeweled chains hung from their necks. Even their boots looked expensive, made from the leather of some animal Lisa could not name. They were known throughout the galaxy. There was rich beyond measure, filled with rare minerals and ancient wealth passed down through countless generations. They controlled trade routes, owned mining companies, and held seats on councils that decided the fate of entire systems. They were powerful, proud, and they believed with absolute certainty that they were better than everyone else. The lead was named. He was older than the other two, with darker scales and a cold expression that never seemed to change. Behind him walked a female with bright green scales and a cruel smile, and a younger male who kept his hands clasped behind his back like a soldier. They looked around the diner with obvious disgust. His golden eyes swept across the room, taking in the chipped tables, the faded posters on the walls, the ordinary people eating their ordinary meals. His lip curled slightly. "This is the place?" asked, her voice sharp and mocking. "This is what humans call a restaurant." "It will do," said. "We have hours before our ship departs. I would rather sit here than stand in the corridor with the common creatures." They chose the largest booth in the back corner and sat down heavily. Lisa grabbed 3 menus and walked over to them, keeping her smile firmly in place. "Good evening," she said politely. "Welcome to the Nebula Grill. Can I start you off with something to drink?" Did not look at her. He was staring at the menu like it had personally offended him. "What passes for wine in this establishment?" "We have a house red and a house white," Lisa said. "We also have ale, nectar, and about 15 kinds of earth beer." "Disgusting," muttered. "Do you have?" Lisa kept her smile steady. "I'm sorry, we don't carry that, but I'd be happy to recommend something similar if you'd like." "Similar?" laughed. It was not a kind laugh. "Nothing in this place could be similar to anything from our world, human. Just bring us water. Clean water if your species is capable of producing such a thing." Lisa nodded and walked back to the counter. Gary, the diner's manager, was watching from behind the register. He was a heavy-set man in his 50s with hair and worried eyes. He said quietly, "Be careful with them, Lisa, they're trouble." "I know," she said, "but they're customers, I'll handle it." She brought them their water and took their food orders. It was not easy. They changed their minds constantly. They asked for dishes that were not on the menu and then grew angry when she explained she could not make them. They wanted their meat cooked in ways the kitchen was not equipped to handle. They demanded spices the diner did not have. Lisa adapted. She spoke to the cook, a patient man named, and together they figured out substitutes and workarounds. She made trip after trip to their table, always polite, always patient, even when waved her away like she was an insect and made jokes about human intelligence that the whole diner could hear. The other customers watched uncomfortably. A few of them caught Lisa's eye and gave her sympathetic looks. A merchant at the counter shook his head slowly. A pair of human truckers in the corner booth muttered to each other about rich alien jerks. But nobody said anything. Nobody interfered. They were too powerful, too connected. Everyone knew what happened to people who crossed them. Lisa just kept working. She brought their food. She refilled their water. She cleared their plates and asked if they needed anything else. She did her job the same way she always did because that was all she knew how to do. At the counter, a man in a faded jumpsuit sat alone, eating a bowl of soup. He had been there for a while, quiet and unnoticed. His name was Danny Cole, and he was watching everything with calm, steady eyes. He said nothing, not yet, but something in the set of his jaw suggested he was paying very close attention. The evening was far from over. Nearly 2 hours passed before they finished their meal. 2 hours of demands, complaints, and endless trips back and forth from the kitchen. Lisa had lost count of how many times she had walked to their table. Her feet throbbed with every step, and a dull headache was forming behind her eyes. They had sent the first round of food back because it was too hot. The second round came back because it was not hot enough. The third time had simply pushed his plate away and declared that human cooking was an insult to his refined senses. Lisa had smiled, apologized, and brought him something else. Had spilled her water deliberately, watching with amusement as Lisa dropped to her knees to clean the floor. Had made her recite the entire dessert menu 3 times before deciding he did not want anything after all. Through it all, the three had laughed at her, mocked her, and treated her like she was less than nothing. Now finally they seemed to be finished. Their plates were empty, their glasses drained. They sat back in the booth, picking at their teeth with golden toothpicks and talking among themselves in their own language. Lisa took a deep breath and walked over with the bill. She had calculated everything carefully, double-checking the numbers to make sure there were no mistakes. The total came to 340 galactic credits. It was a large bill, but they had ordered a lot of food and taken up her table for most of the evening. "Here you are," she said, placing the small tablet on their table. "Whenever you're ready, no rush." Glanced down at the tablet. His golden eyes scanned the numbers slowly. Then he looked up at Lisa and he laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. It was cold and sharp like ice cracking on a frozen lake, and joined in, their laughter filling the quiet diner. "Pay," said his voice thick with amusement. "You expect us to pay." Lisa blinked. "I'm sorry." "She wants us to pay," said Tu, as if Lisa was not standing right there. "The little human actually thinks we're going to give her money." Lisa's stomach tightened. She had dealt with difficult customers before. People who complained about prices, who tried to argue their way to a discount, who left without tipping. But something in's eyes told her this was different. "The bill is 340 credits, she said carefully. "If there's a problem with any of the charges, I can go over them with you." Rose from his seat. He was so tall that Lisa had to tilt her head back to look at his face. He stared down at her with those cold, golden eyes, and his lips curled into a sneer. "Let me explain something to you, human," he said slowly, as if speaking to a child. "On my world, your species is considered barely sentient. You are useful for manual labor, perhaps, or simple tasks that require no intelligence. But you are not our equals. You are not even close." Lisa felt her cheeks grow hot. The other customers in the diner had gone completely silent. She could feel their eyes on her, watching, waiting. "Paying you," continued, "would be like paying an animal. It would be beneath my dignity. It would be an insult to my family name and to the honor of the people. We do not pay livestock," added with a grin. "We simply use them and move on." Lisa's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her apron to hide the trembling. "Sir, I don't want any trouble, but you ate the food. The policy of this establishment is that customers pay for what they order." Stood up and leaned close to Lisa's face. Her breath smelled like spices and something sour underneath. "And what are you going to do about it, little human? Call security? Make a scene? Do you have any idea who we are?" "The family controls 17 shipping routes through this sector," said calmly. "One word from me, and this station loses half its trade. One message to the right people, and this pathetic little diner gets shut down within a week. Is that what you want?" Lisa's throat felt tight. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Gary had been watching from behind the counter. Now he hurried over, wiping his hands nervously on his shirt. "Is everything all right here? Can I help with something?" Turned his gaze to the older man. "Ah, the owner. Perhaps you can explain to your servant how the universe works. We are leaving now. We will not be paying. And if either of you makes trouble for us, you will regret it for the rest of your short, meaningless lives." Gary's face went pale. He looked at Lisa, then back at and Lisa could see the defeat in his eyes. He was afraid. They were all afraid. "I understand," Gary said quietly. "There won't be any trouble." "Gary," Lisa whispered, "that's 300 credits. I can't cover that. They'll take it out of my pay." "I'm sorry, Lisa," Gary said, and he genuinely looked sorry. "There's nothing I can do." Smiled a thin and cruel expression. "You see, your own kind understands. You should learn from him, girl. Know your place." He reached out and patted Lisa on the head like she was a pet. His clawed hand was cold against her hair. She flinched but did not pull away. And rose from the booth, adjusting their expensive robes. They walked past Lisa without a second glance, heading toward the door. Lisa stood frozen in place. Her eyes were burning with tears she refused to let fall. 340 credits. It would take her weeks to pay that back. Weeks of extra shifts, of skipped meals, of falling even further behind on her father's debts. She had done everything right. She had been polite. She had been patient. She had given them the best service she could, and none of it had mattered. The diner was completely silent. The other customers looked down at their tables, uncomfortable and ashamed. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. At the counter, Danny Cole set down his spoon. He had been watching the whole thing, his soup growing cold in front of him. His face was calm, but something hard had settled in his eyes. He looked at Lisa standing there, small and alone and fighting back tears. He looked at the three walking toward the exit like they owned the universe. And something inside him made a decision. He pushed back his stool and stood up. "Hey," he called out, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "Where do you think you're going?" The three stopped in their tracks, turned around slowly, his golden eyes narrowing as he searched for the source of the voice. The other customers in the diner seemed to hold their breath. Danny Cole stood by the counter, his hands hanging loose at his sides. He was not a big man. Not tall, not muscular, not impressive in any obvious way. He had the look of someone who had spent years doing hard work in cramped spaces. His hands were rough and calloused. His face was weathered by time and stress, had started to appear in his short brown hair, even though he was probably not yet 40. He wore a faded jumpsuit, the kind that cargo haulers wore on the long-distance freighters that moved goods between the outer systems. The name patch on his chest said coal in simple letters. His boots were scuffed and worn. Everything about him said working class, ordinary, unremarkable. But he stood there anyway, looking directly at three of the wealthiest and most powerful aliens in the sector, and he did not look away. Seemed more confused than angry at first. He tilted his head slightly, studying Danny like he was examining a strange insect. "Did you just speak to me?" asked. "I did," Danny said. His voice was calm and steady. "I asked where you think you're going." Laughed, "Look at this, a labor creature with opinions." "You've got a bill to pay," Danny continued, ignoring her. "The young lady there worked hard to take care of you all evening. The least you can do is settle up before you leave." Took a step toward Danny, his posture shifting into something more threatening. "Do you know who you're talking to, human? Do you have any idea what we could do to you?" "I know exactly who you are," Danny said. "Rich folks from a rich world. I've seen your kind before. You think your money makes you special. You think it gives you the right to treat people however you want." He took a step forward, closing the distance between them. His movements were slow and deliberate, like a man who had learned long ago that rushing never helped anything. "But where I come from," Danny said, "a man's worth isn't measured by what's in his pocket. It's measured by how he treats people who can't fight back." His expression shifted from confusion to amusement. A smile spread across his scaled face, revealing rows of small, sharp teeth. "Where you come from," repeated. "And where might that be? Some forgotten colony on the edge of nowhere, some dirt farm on a dying world." "Cedar Falls," Danny said. "Little town in Iowa back on Earth. You've probably never heard of it. Not much there except cornfields and good people. But my mama raised me right. She taught me that you don't walk away from someone who needs help. You don't stand by while bullies push folks around. And you sure as hell don't steal from a working girl just because you think you're better than her." The diner had gone completely still. Every eye was fixed on Danny and Lisa stood frozen near the back booth, tears still glistening in her eyes. Gary watched from behind the counter, his face a mixture of fear and something that might have been hope. Chuckled softly. "This is entertaining, I admit. A poor human hauler lecturing me on morality. Tell me, little man, what exactly do you plan to do about this situation? Fight us. There are three of us and one of you. We could tear you apart without breaking a sweat." "I'm not looking for a fight," Danny said. "Then what?" asked, stepping closer. Her golden eyes gleamed with cruel curiosity. "Will you pay her bill yourself? Buy her honor like some ancient knight from your primitive stories? Look at you. You're clearly poor. You probably don't have 2 credits to rub together." Danny was quiet for a moment. He looked down at his worn boots, then back up at the. "You're right," he said slowly. "I don't have much. I'm just a hauler. I move cargo from one end of the galaxy to the other, and I've been doing it for most of my adult life. It's not glamorous work. It doesn't pay well. But it's honest, and I sleep fine at night knowing I earned every credit I've got." He reached into the pocket of his jumpsuit and pulled out a small device. It was a credit chip, the kind that people used to store their savings. The chip was battered and scratched, clearly old, clearly well used. "This here is everything I own," Danny said, holding up the chip. 6 years of hauling freight across the outer systems. 6 years of sleeping in cramped bunks, eating cheap food, missing holidays and birthdays and all the things that make life worth living. He looked at the chip in his hand, and something sad passed across his face, something private and painful. "I was saving this money for something important," he continued quietly. "My mother is sick, real sick. There's a medical station about 3 weeks from here that has a treatment that might help her, might give her a few more years, but the treatment costs money, a lot of money, and this chip is everything I've got." Lisa's hand flew to her mouth. She shook her head, trying to say something, but no words came out. Gary took a step forward, "Sir, you don't have to do this." Danny looked at him and smiled. It was a tired smile, but there was warmth in it. "Yeah," he said, "I do." He turned back to face was watching him with an expression that was harder to read now. Not quite amusement anymore, not quite contempt, something else. "You asked what I plan to do," Danny said. "Well, here it is. I'm going to walk over to that young woman and I'm going to give her this chip, every credit I've got. It should cover your bill with plenty left over. And then I'm going to walk out of here and figure out what comes next." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "Because that's what humans do," he said. "We take care of each other, even when it costs us everything, even when the odds are against us, even when nobody's watching and there's no reward waiting at the end. We do the right thing because it's right, not because it's easy, not because it makes sense, but because it's who we are." He looked directly at. "And that's something all your money will never be able to buy." Danny walked past without looking at them. His footsteps were the only sound in the silent diner. Every patron watched him move, their meals forgotten, their conversations abandoned. Even the kitchen had gone quiet. The cook stood in the doorway, a spatula still in his hand, his eyes wide. Lisa had not moved from where she stood near the back booth. Tears were running freely down her cheeks now, and she was shaking her head slowly, as if she could somehow stop what was about to happen. Danny stopped in front of her. Up close, she could see the lines around his eyes, in his stubble, the quiet strength in his face. He did not look like a hero from the old stories. He looked like what he was, a tired man who had worked hard his whole life and had little to show for it. He held out the credit chip. "Here," he said gently. "This should cover their bill plus a real nice tip for your trouble, and whatever's left over, you keep it. Use it for whatever you need. I'm guessing a girl who works as hard as you has plenty of things she needs." Lisa stared at the chip in his hand. She could not speak. Her throat had closed up completely. "I can't take this," she finally managed to whisper. "Your mother, you said she's sick. You need this money." Danny smiled softly. "My mama would skin me alive if she knew I walked away from someone in need just to save her. That's not how she raised me. And I reckon I'd rather face whatever comes next knowing I did right by you than live comfortable knowing I didn't." He took her hand and pressed the chip into her palm. His fingers were warm and rough against her skin. "You're a good kid," he said. "I can tell. Working hard, staying polite even when folks treat you bad. The world needs more people like you. Don't let tonight make you hard. Don't let these fancy lizards make you think everyone's rotten. Most folks are decent. They just forget sometimes." Behind them, found his voice again. "This is absurd," he said. His tone had changed. The amusement was gone, replaced by something that sounded almost like confusion. "You just gave away everything, for a stranger, for some random female of your species that you've never even met before." Danny turned to face him. "That's right." "But why?" demanded. "What do you gain from this? What's your angle? There must be something you want. Humans always want something." "Not everything's about wanting something," Danny said. "Sometimes you do things just because they're right. I know that's probably hard for you to understand. Where you come from, everything's a transaction. Everything's about profit and loss, winners and losers. But that's not how all of us live." He took a step toward, and this time he actually took a half step back. Danny noticed it, and something flickered in his eyes. Not triumph. Something sadder than that. "You've got everything," Danny said quietly. "More money than I'll ever see in 100 lifetimes. More power than I can even imagine. And you couldn't bring yourself to pay a working girl for the meal she served you. You couldn't find it in yourself to show one tiny bit of kindness to someone who was doing her best to take care of you." He shook his head slowly. "I've got almost nothing. After tonight, I've got exactly nothing. But I'd give it all away, every last credit, just to show that young woman that not everyone in this universe is like you. Just to prove that kindness still exists, that decency still matters, That being poor doesn't mean being cruel. Made a sound of disgust. You're insane. All of you humans are insane. This obsession with helping each other with sacrifice and duty and honor, it's irrational, it's inefficient, it makes no logical sense. Maybe not, Danny agreed. But it makes us human, and I'd rather be an irrational human than a logical monster. The words hung in the air like smoke. His face had gone through several expressions during Danny's speech. Anger, confusion, and now, underneath it all, something that might have been shame. It was just a flicker, quickly hidden, but Danny saw it. The whole diner saw it. An elderly merchant at the counter had been watching in silence. Now he rose from his stool, his joints creaking softly. He walked over to Lisa and reached into his robes, pulling out a handful of credit chips. "The human speaks truth," the said in his deep, rumbling voice. "I have traveled many worlds and seen many species, but I have never seen anything quite like what I witnessed tonight." He placed the chips in Lisa's hand next to Danny's chip. "For you, young one, a small gift from an old traveler." A trader at a nearby table stood up next. She was tall and willowy, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. Without a word, she walked over and added her own credits to the growing pile in Lisa's hands. Then one of the human truckers from the corner booth. Then his partner. Then a family of who had been eating quietly by the window. Then a young human couple on what looked like a date night. One by one, the patrons of the Nebula Grill rose from their seats and approached Lisa Monroe. Each of them added something. Some gave large amounts, some gave small. An old man apologized because he could only spare a few credits. A human teenager emptied his pockets of loose change. It did not matter. They all gave what they could. Lisa stood in the middle of it all, tears streaming down her face, her hands overflowing with more credits than she had ever held in her life. She tried to thank each person, but the words kept getting stuck in her throat. The watched from near the door. His face had gone pale beneath his scales, and exchanged uncertain glances. For the first time in their lives, they were not the most powerful beings in the room, not because anyone had threatened them, not because anyone had fought them, but because something was happening that all their wealth and influence could not stop. The diner had turned against them, not with violence, not with anger, but with something far more devastating. Compassion. And they had no idea how to fight it. The silence that followed was unlike anything the Nebula Grill had ever experienced. It was not an empty silence. It was full, heavy. Every person in that diner was looking at the three aristocrats, and for the first time, the look in their eyes was not fear. It was judgment. Stood by the door, his clawed hands clenched at his sides. His golden eyes moved across the room, taking in the faces of the patrons who had risen to give. Humans. Species that his kind had always considered inferior. Species that his family had exploited for generations. And yet here they were, standing together, united by something he could not quite name. He turned his gaze to Danny Cole, who stood quietly beside Lisa with his hands in his pockets. The cargo hauler looked smaller now, tired, empty. He had given away everything he owned, and it showed in the slight slump of his shoulders. But he did not look defeated. There was a light in his eyes that had never seen before, not pride exactly, something quieter than that, something more powerful. "You have humiliated us," said. His voice was low and tight. "Do you understand what you have done? My family will hear of this. There will be consequences." Danny shrugged. "Maybe, probably. I've faced worse than angry lizards with too much money. I'll survive." "You say that now. But when you're blacklisted from every hauling company in the sector, when no station will hire you, when you're begging for scraps in some forgotten corner of space, you will remember this moment. You will regret what you did tonight." Danny looked at him for a long moment. Then he smiled, and there was no anger in it, only a strange kind of peace. "No," he said simply, "I don't think I will." Stepped forward, her scales flushed with anger. This is not over, human. You think you've won something here. You've won nothing. We do not forget insults. We do not forgive disrespect. The elderly merchant cleared his throat. He stepped forward, placing himself between thee and Danny. You may be, he said calmly, but you are not on you are on Waypoint Station 12, and here we have a long memory too. Word travels fast among traders. By this time tomorrow, every merchant on this station will know what happened in this diner tonight. By next week, the story will have spread to a dozen systems. He smiled, and there was something sharp behind his gentle expression. How do you think your business partners will react when they hear that the great refused to pay a working girl and had to be shamed by a poor cargo hauler? How will your competitors use this story? How will your family react when they learn that you brought dishonor on your house in front of a room full of witnesses? His face went rigid, his jaw tightened. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, with a sudden violent motion, he reached into his robes and pulled out a handful of high-value credit chips. He threw them on the floor at Lisa's feet, his golden eyes blazing with fury. There, he spat, your payment, more than this pathetic establishment is worth, more than any of you will ever see again. Take it. Take it, and remember that you won nothing here tonight. You are still nothing. You will always be nothing. He turned and stormed toward the door, his robes billowing behind him, and followed close behind, neither of them looking back. The door slid shut behind them, and they were gone. For a moment nobody moved. Then slowly, the tension in the room began to dissolve. People let out breaths they had been holding. A few nervous laughs broke out. The human truckers in the corner started clapping, and soon the whole diner joined in. Lisa stood in the middle of it all, surrounded by credits, surrounded by strangers who had become something more than strangers in the space of a few minutes. She was crying again, but these were different tears. Relief, gratitude, disbelief at what had just happened. She turned to Danny, who was already picking up his worn jacket from the counter. Wait, she said, pushing through the small crowd. Please wait. Danny paused, looking at her with those tired, kind eyes. Lisa held out his credit chip. Take it back, please. I can't keep this. Your mother needs that treatment. You need this money. Danny shook his head gently. I told you, keep it. You earned it. Hell, after what you put up with tonight, you earned 10 times that. But what about your mom? What will you do? Danny was quiet for a moment. He looked around the diner at all the faces watching him, humans and aliens alike, all of them looking at him with something that felt uncomfortably like admiration. I'll figure something out, he said. I always do. Maybe I'll pick up some extra runs. Maybe I'll find a cheaper treatment somewhere else. The universe is big. There's always another option if you're willing to look hard enough. Gary stepped forward, his eyes red. Your meals are free here for life, Mr. Cole. Anytime you're on this station, you eat here for free. That's a promise. The elderly merchant approached and pressed a data card into Danny's hand. My company is always looking for reliable haulers. Premium cargo, premium pay. 3 times what you're making now, I would guess. The job is yours if you want it. A woman added, I know a doctor on station. She owes me a favor. I can ask her about your mother's condition. Maybe there are options you don't know about yet. Others chimed in, offers of help, connections, opportunities. The same community that had come together to shame that was now coming together to lift up the man who had started it all. Danny looked overwhelmed. He opened his mouth, closed it, and for a moment the steady cargo hauler who had faced down 3 aristocrats without flinching seemed at a loss for words. Lisa touched his arm. Why? She asked softly. Why did you do it? You didn't know me. You didn't owe me anything. Danny looked at her, and his tired eyes softened. Because back on Earth, he said, my mama taught me that being human isn't about what you've got. It's about what you're willing to give. It's about standing up when everyone else sits down. It's about treating strangers like family, because when you get right down to it, that's what we all are. Family. One big, messy, stubborn, beautiful family spread out across the stars. He picked up his jacket and slung it over his shoulder. Take care of yourself, Lisa Monroe, and don't forget what happened here tonight. Don't forget that when things got hard, people stepped up. That's the universe at its best. That's humanity at its best. He walked toward the door, and the patrons parted to let him pass. Some of them reached out to pat his shoulder or shake his hand. He accepted each gesture with a humble nod. At the door, he turned back one last time. "Best soup I ever had, by the way," he said with a small grin. Then Danny Cole walked out into the station corridor, lighter in his pockets but standing taller than when he had come in. Behind him, the Nebula Grill erupted in cheers. And somewhere in the back of the diner, Lisa Monroe clutched a handful of credits to her chest and smiled through her tears, knowing that she had witnessed something rare and precious. She had witnessed what humans could do when they gave everything they had.